Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Lamed Tet, and we are in the sixth chapter of Masechet Nazir. And in the sixth chapter of Masechet Nazir, we are talking about the various prohibitions that are involved in being a Nazir. We have talked about the question of of eating or consuming, I should say, grape products. So drinking wine, drinking grape juice, eating grapes, eating raisins, eating the grape seeds, eating the grape skins. All of those are various prohibitions, and indeed 5 of them, grape skins, grape seeds, the raisins, grapes, fresh grapes, and what's the last one? And wine. Those 5 constitute different prohibitions, and you could end up being subject to 5 different sets of lashes if you were warned for each of them if you were to eat them. So that was what we were covering on the first Mishnah of the 6th chapter, and now we turn to the cutting of hair, and so we are at the Mishnah on the 6th line of Lamed Tet Amud Aleph. Lamed Tet is the daf for today, 39. And so we pick up with the Mishnah, and the Mishnah has a series of rules. Stam Nazirut Lamed Yom. The first rule, which we've seen before, of course, is that a simple Nazirut, a plain Nazirut, a standard Nazirut, is for 30 days. Meaning, if one says that they're going to be a Nazir and does not define a time associated with it, then they will be a Nazir for 30 days. And of course, we saw that there's a machlokus that we saw early on, that whether this is really 30 full days or it's 29 days, and everything, all the conclusion happens on the 30th day, and so that's why it's referred to as 30 days. But in any event, or that this is so anyway, so that's that was the machlokas that we've seen before. But in any event, so then it adds, now it gets to our topic, and the Tosos will help us understand why we reference the rule that we already had, that we already knew, namely that a standard Nazirut is 30 days. Gilach o shegilchuhu listim, if the person shaves themselves, or they are shaved by bandits, thieves. So ser lamed yom, you undo the 30 days. So there are a couple of possible implications here. One is that whatever the amount of Nazirut would be undone. A second is that you undo a full 30 days. And we'll see Tosos offers a third approach. So Tosos, fourth Tosos on the daf, Stam Nazirut Lamed Yom. So Kvar Shaninu Zeb Parakama, we already learned this in the first chapter of Maseches Nazir, that the fact that the Stam Nazirut is 30 days. And we taught it here because we're about to say, as we've already gone through in the Mishnah, in the wording of the Mishnah itself, that if you in fact shave, then you lose the 30 days. So Tani Nami Stam Nazirut Shloshim Yom. So because we said that, we also taught the concept of a Stam Nazirut is 30 days. The time of the Soter Lamed Yom, and the reason that we undo 30 days, that the person essentially is forfeited for 30 days, Mishum Deboy Nazirut Shalelo Tiglachat Shel Mitzvah. That you, in order to do at the end, hello, Mark and Lori, in order to have a stand is on the computer, so stands on the screen. So what?
We see him?
No, well, you can see him if you come over here. You can see him on the screen. But although its camera doesn't seem to be working too well, but this is Stan. So anyway, so the point is that in order for you to have sufficient hair on your head that it's worth cutting, you need to have growth for 30 days. Kadesh Yehesaro Gadal, Kapira Sharoi Ligadel, Tistam Nazirut. So
this guy today.
Who's the Tosos? We're doing a lot of Tosos today. So the point is that here we have the idea being is that when The reason that Stam Nazirut is 30 days is, and that's why it's being taught here, is because in order to have a good shaving at the end of the person's Nazirut, because at the end of the person's Nazirut, you shave all their hair off the top of their head. So as a result, that's why you need to, if somebody were to be shaved earlier, you need to forfeit 30 days. You need to wait 30 days. Dahainu shloshim yom. That's the amount of time in order to have a good hair growth. Umayri shegochu b'yom milot. And when we say that he has to forfeit his 30 days, we're talking about where he was shaved on day 30th. On day 30, Sharei im galchuhu bishnayim oyoter. Or if on the other hand he was shaved on the second day or more, meaning if you're shaved on the first day, well, then you can still pick up on the rest of the first day and just start over again. But if you're shaved on day 2 or any later day, lama yistor et kol, you really haven't eliminated the whole thing. But rather you just have to count what you already counted. So if you got shaved on day 15, well, then you need to wait essentially an extra 14 days so that you end up having 30 days of full growth. So shemana kvar v'ulai hachinami ka'amar soter ad sheyehush se'arotav kedei shloshim yom. And that maybe when it says soter lamed yom, what it really means is that you need to soter, you need to forfeit up to the number of days so that you can count 30 days. So kach nimtza beferish harav Yitzchak behilkach benazirus shal shishim yom, that if you have a nazirus of 60 days, im galchu b'yom shloshim, if they actually shave the guy on day 30 and maybe even on day 31, einu soter klum, he doesn't have to lose anything. De'ika adayin gidol seyar kodem yom tiglachat, because on before his day of shaving, he will have sufficient number of days that he'll end up with 30 days of no shaving. V'im galchu achar shikalu yamav, and if in fact he's shaved after all his days are complete, v'ein gidol seyar v'ein gidol seyar, so soter lamed the Rabbanan kedemuchach b'gemara. We'll see in the end that the rabbis say that if in fact at the end, after you've already done everything, you're ready to bring your korbanot, and now you get shaved, well then that is a situation where you'll have to wait again another 30 days, because again the rabbis are going to say that you need to have 30 days of growth. So that's Tosfos's approach. Okay, so that's one. Interestingly enough, the Rambam understands our Mishnah very literally. Our Mishnah says soser lamed yom. So as a result, the Rambam says that if you have a 100-day Nazirut and you get shaved on day 20, well, then you take a pause of your Nazirut for 30 days, and then you will pick up the count again. And so in the end, that person will end up having to, will end up with 110 days of growth and will have ended up counting 130 days of their Nazirut. So just an interesting, different approach that, again, the Rambam takes, very understanding our Mishnah very literally. So that was rules number 1 and 2. Now, rule number 3. Rule number 3 in our Mishnah, of course, rule number 1 didn't really have to do with shaving. Rule number 2 and 3 are relate to shaving. So number 3 is Nazir shegilach ben bezug ben betar, that it doesn't make a difference whether you use scissors or you use a razor, oshasif safe, or you pick it at your hair, kol shehu, even a little bit, chayav, you are chayav. Now, what does kol shehu mean in this context? So let's take a look at we'll start with the Mefarish, which is the last Mefarish on the Mishnah. Oh, shasif seif kol shehu shetalish ktsat berosh haseyar, that you cut off a little bit at the tip of your heads. You know, you cut off the split ends, so to speak. You know, just cut off the ends. You don't pull a hair out by its root. But that's not, but the implication is that you would cut potentially 2 hairs, but only a little bit of the hair, not the entire hair. Whereas Tosos in the top of the medium wide lines Tosos. So Nazir Shigilach Ben B'Misparayim Shasif saves. So you can see that they use that Tosos here actually tells us that the word Zug means Misparayim or scissors. So Perush Talash Kolshahu. It doesn't make it when it says the meaning of cutting one even any amount. Afil Seyarachad, even just 1 hair, Lokalav, you'll end up with Malchus. Myrisha Oker Haseyar Miikaro. And in that situation, we're talking about where you pull out the hair, you uproot the hair from its root. Umashkis Minashorish, and you therefore have destroyed that particular hair from its very foundation. Aim tar, just like a razor does. When you use a razor against your skin, so then you have effectively plucked out the hair. Deloka, that, and similarly that gets malchus. Mikra de ta'ar lo ya'avar al rosho, and we will see that you get malchus from the pasuk where it says that the razor should not pass over the person's head. Demar binan begamara shar hama'avirin, that we will learn from this phraseology all the other kinds of things that could potentially pass over the person's head. So that is our Mishnah, and now we're ready to inquire as to an interesting question, Mark and Lori. Does hair grow from the end, or does it grow from the root? That's the question. From the root. Yes, you are absolutely right. And now we're going to see. We're going to try to answer it 5 different times. The first time we're going to say that maybe it grows from the end, and then we're going to offer 4 different efforts to try and show that it grows from the root. The first 2 are going to be rejected, but the last 2 will be accepted. And of course,
this would potentially have implications for the general permissibility of shaving.
Yes, we're going to see that question more tomorrow and over the weekend, I believe, but not. But it is. You're right that. What this? Oh, okay, all right. So now we're going to. So the question that the Gemara begins with Ibailahu. What time shul tomorrow? I'll check after the class. Okay. So Ibailahu. So they asked, "Hi Mazia milatachas Rabbe o milael?" When our hair grows, does it grow from the bottom or from the top? Meaning, does new hair come out? Is it sort of like, I'm just trying to think of an example, like a snake maybe. When a snake grows longer, presumably the tail gets bigger. It grows out the back. The whole thing grows up. But I guess and so the question is it like that, or is it from the root? So l'may nafkamina. So of course we first have to explain why does it make a difference. So l'nazir shegilchu list him. If you have a nazir who these bandits, the thieves, the robbers came and they took him and they shaved his head. Vishirubo bo kidei lachof rosho liikaro. But they left enough hair. They didn't cut it all the way to the root. They left enough hair that you could bend the hair from its tip to its root. So you can imagine, obviously, if you take some of the longer hairs on the rest of your body, you can probably bend it from the root from the hair tip to the root. But you need a certain amount of length in order to be able to do that. It's not very much, but you need a certain amount of length. And so if they left that amount of length, then this would be a situation where it would make a difference whether we say that hair grows from the top or from the bottom. Because amra militachas rabbe, because if you say that it grows from the bottom, so nazirus hashakle. Well, if it grows from the bottom, then what you have at the moment that they shaved him is the new hair. You don't have the hair that the person said that when they said that they were going to be a Nazir, they were effectively sanctifying all of their hair that they had at that time. They can't sanctify what they didn't have yet. So they sanctified what they had, and now the person has cut off all of the person's hair. And so the idea is we need to have a new sanctification. And so that new sanctification requires a full 30 days of growth. But if you say that the hair grows from the ends, so my akdish hakayim, well, then what you have that remains, that still is an okay growth. And so as a result, we don't need to restart the count, because you still have the hair that you sanctified when one became a Nazir. So again, we're going to have 5 efforts to try and answer the question. And then once we answer the question, we're going to go back and cite a brisa that seems to contradict the answer that we gave. So Tashma, Maha Inva Chaya. Let's prove it from the live Inva. Now, Inva, if we take a look at the very beginning of Tosos Tashma Mahai Inva, it's the 1, 2, 3rd, 5th Tosos in the medium wide lines. Tashma Mahai Inva, Perish Beitze Kinim, the eggs of lice. So you take a look at lice. When you find lice, it is almost always near the root. Dekoyim beikva devinta, right? It stays at the base of the hair. And if you say that the lice, that hair grows from the bottom, eventually the lice should get further away from the head of the hair. And so as a result, doesn't that show that it grows from the top? So no, really, it could grow from the bottom. It could grow from the bottom. And why is it that we always find the lice at the bottom? But because the lice is alive, so it sort of moves itself down the hair in order to stay near the scalp. So, all right, so that was effort number 1. Effort number 1 failed. Tashma inva mesa beresha devinta. Well, 1 second, what about a dead lice? So the isalka daitek de elra, and therefore, and we'll say that it must grow from the bottom, because if you say that it grows from the top, so then biikva devinta boy lamekam, it should stay at the bottom of the hair, meaning it should stay near the root. But in fact, we see that as when it comes to a dead item that's stuck on the hair, it does grow, it does end up at the ends of the hair. Well, Hasamnami, there too, we could say no, Mishum delays Bechayla, because it doesn't have the strength. Shruge Shriga Ba'azil. So as a result, because it's not alive, so as a result, it doesn't have the strength to hold on to the hair. And so as a result, through gravity, as it will eventually get closer to the ends of the hair. So that is the explanation of and rejection of attempt number 2. And so let's take a quick look at Tosos, the last of the medium wide lines in Tosos. Hasam nami mishum delays bechela. Kolomar bezu shahari mesa, because it's dead. Shamta va'azla, it slides along. Mechuberet, it slides along, and while it's attached, v'yored the rosh haser, and we'll end up at the tips of the hair. V'shehu tale lamata, because those tips hang down through gravity. Litzad haaretz, towards the land, towards the earth. Ve'ein la koach shlahachez l'malu litzad rosh, and it doesn't have the strength to hold on at the top. So that's answer number 2. Again, that gets rejected. Answer number 3. Tashma mi beluris dechushim. So let's learn it from the beluris of the kushim. And so Tosos helps us understand here that sheminichim, the last Tosos on the top, sheminichim belurios beroshehem. They leave their hair in braids. L'shem avodah zara, for the avodah zara, for their idol worship. Ubiseiar ein migalchin kol saviv rosho. They don't shave their hair all around. The umasha hayuminichin min hein gidlu ota kikliya samach larosh. So and they tie the tight braids. The eno mahudak kibarishona, and as they grow, it's not as tight as it was originally. The emila el rabbi, and if you say that, so devasar, and I'm sorry, I didn't read the next words in the Gemara, which should have been debasar de megadlin law rafya milatachas, that after it's braided, it loosens at the root. So here, and Tosos explains the question, V'imila el Rabbi, if you want to say that the hair grows from the tips, well, amai, why does it loosen at the bottom? Elavadai milatachas Rabbi, it must be growing from the bottom, and that's why it loosens. V'nidches hakaliya lifnim, and so as a result, it loosens the braids at the bottom. The hala min rosh, as it goes away from the head. V'nimtza kibis say ar shesamach larosh ena kalua v'lekach havi keperish. And so therefore, it's as we explained that it must be that the hair is growing from the root. So again, the Gemara rejects this and says hasam nami aidi dekamtehi mishichva derafia. No, we can say that because and let's take a look back into Tosos. Umishani, we answer Aidi dekamtehi mishichva rafia. That way we answer that because of its of the wrapping, it's going to and the lying down, it's going to loosen. And Tosos explains, the fact that you put your head on a pillow, and so as a result, you lie on your head. Gnosis mimikoma, you move the hair from its location. The near pitch samach larosh, and as a result, it will end up becoming looser from that additional pressure. So 3 efforts. First one was to say that it grew from the tip. The next 2 are say that it grows from the root, and they're all rejected. So now we have 2 efforts to show that it grows from the root, and they are going to be successful. So tashma miskarta. So let's take a look at the miskarta. The miskarta is the red paint that is used to mark the animals that are Meiser Behema. And as we saw a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago at this point, that when we have Meiser Behema, you have all the new animals put into a pen for the year, and you count them out, and every 10th one you mark as Meiser. And we said, what happens as the wool, because you do that with sheep, and the sheep, of course, their wool grows. Durafi Amra Milatakas, and we see that the sort of the paint moves away and the wool loosens at the bottom. You had the red paint, which sort of clumped together the hair on the sheep, and now it's looser at the bottom. Doesn't that show that it grows from the bottom? Vitanya, and indeed that was taught in a brisa. So in fact, this is a good proof. Visu, and moreover, proof number 5, kad savei savia dekinon. What about the dye that people use on their beards to look younger? So chivran, the white that you end up in the beards, ikve nimhon, as we turn to lamed tet amabet, it comes at the bottom. Of course, we see this in dye jobs today. We see that the original hair color or the current hair color comes out of the bottom. So shmamina militachas rabbe shmamina. And so we see from here that actually hair grows from the bottom. And so we've actually proven that, in fact, hair grows from the bottom. Okay, well, now that we've proven that, now we're going to cite a difficulty. Because what did we say at the beginning? That if the hair grows from the bottom, then even if the robbers were to leave over some amount of hair, you would need to redo the entire counting, because the hair that is growing now was not the hair that the Nazir made Kodesh. So the Elaha the Tanya, but 1 second, what we learn in a brisa, Nazir shegilchu listim, if you have a Nazir who got shaved by robbers, vishiru bo kedei lochov rosho leikaro, and they left enough hair on his head so that you could bend the hair to touch the root. Eino soser. We say that it doesn't contradict any, it doesn't cause the person to lose any of the days of their Nazirut. Now, if you were to say that the hair grows from the bottom, listor, well, then he should certainly have to give up the dates, give up the time. So kagon shegilchu achar milot, No, so we're talking about where the person was shaved after he finished his term, but before he was able to go through the entire concluding ritual and offering all of the korbanot. Umani, and whose opinion is this, that you don't have to wait an additional 30 days? Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer. De Amar, Kol Achar Milos Zayin Soser. Because Rabbi Eliezer says that what do you have to give up if you get shaved at the end before you actually go to, you do all of the process, the concluding ceremonies. If you get shaved at the end, and you get shaved all the way to the root, then all you have to do is wait seven days. And if we take a look in the Rashi side of the daf, in the Mefarish, at the end of the Mefarish, that is Ella Hadatanya, it's the Mefarish that begins on the first of the narrow lines, but we're going to go down to the end of that, Mefarish. V'hachanami hoel de pashule kidei lekuf rosho leikaro. And so as a result, now that we understand Rabbi Eliezer's view, that Rabbi Eliezer says you need to wait 7 days if you get shaved. Well, if you are shaved and you are left with hair that is sufficiently long that you can bend the top to the root, Eino tzarech listor klum. You don't have to reduce anything. You don't have to do any new days, because elam miyad migalech, you can get your hair cut immediately. Because the whole purpose of waiting 7 days is in order to wait long enough that your hair would be long enough so that you could grow, so that you would have hair that is long enough that you could bend the top to the root. So my time of the Rebbe Eliezer, what's the reasoning of Rebbe Eliezer to say that you only have to wait 7 days? So Yalav Tiglachas Latara, he derives the rules associated with shaving hair from the rules of Tahara. Mit Galachas Tuma. Yalav Tiglachas Tahara mit Tiglachas Tuma. He derives the rules of shaving one's head in a situation, in an ordinary situation, where a person is at the end of their time and they are tahor. They never had a time where they were tameh. He learns that from a situation of the shaving where you are tameh. That if ma tiglachas tuma shiva, that if in fact a person at the end of their Nazir period, again after their Nazirut was over, they now, they said that they were going to be a Nazir for 30 days. They had been a Nazir for 30 days. Now on day 31 in the morning, they became Tameh. And we saw that according to Rabbi Eliezer, you need to wait 7 days. And so as a result, and by the way, because you are Tameh, you need to shave all your hair. And now you wait 7 days to go through the tahara process, to get sprinkled with on day 3 and day 7, because we're talking about a tumas mace here. And so as a result, now that he's waited the 7 days of that process, he can immediately be shaved. So too, aptiklakas tahara shiva. So too, when it comes to the head shaving associated with somebody who is not tameh, 7 days of growth is sufficient. The kim lahu l'rabanan. And it was known generally that by the rabbis, kol shiva yomin, all 7 days, asya mizmazya kedei lachov rosho liikaro. That's enough time to allow somebody to have their hair grow enough to bend its tip to the root. And so as a result, we now understand that even though we say that in fact, ordinarily, if you were to have your hair shaved in the middle, you're going to have to wait, according to Tosos, at least 30 days before you could do the head shaving at the end. And that's the position of the rabbis. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, no, if you had your head shaved after your term of Nazirut was already over, then even 7 days of waiting is sufficient. Just like 7 days is waiting is sufficient when it comes to a situation where somebody became Tameh at the end, after the conclusion of their Nazirut. Okay, so that completes that piece. And now our Mishnah noted that a Nazir violates the prohibition of cutting his hair, whether he uses a razor, scissors, or hands. And now we're going to offer another opinion. We're going to quote a Baraisa that provides the support for our position in our Mishnah, but we'll also quote Rabbi Yonatan, and who has a different opinion. So Nazir Shegilach ben Datar ben Bezug Osha Siv Save Kolshu Chayav. All those situations, one is going to be liable for lashes, meaning it doesn't make a difference how the Nazir gets rid of some of the Nazir's hair. That's going to be a problem. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Brisa, the rabbis taught in a Brisa, Ta'ar, you have a razor. The pasuk says, and let's go through the pasuk just so that we have it handy. Kol Yemei Neder Nizro, all the days of the vow of his Nazirut. Ta'ar, a razor, lo yavor al rosho, shall not pass over his head. Ad milos hayamim, until the completion of the days. Asher Yazir, that he has created a Nazirut for himself. La Hashem Kadosh yiyeh, he shall be holy, or it shall be holy to God. Gadel Pareya Se'ar Rosho, his the hair on his head shall grow wild, or shall grow without being limited. Okay, so that is what the pasuk says, and so now let's take a look. So Tana Rabbanan Ta'ar, our pasuk says a razor. So Ein Li Elatar. So of course that is how we know that a razor is going to be prohibited as a mechanism for cutting the hair. Talash Meiret Siv Save Kolshahu Minayan. How do I know the rest of this of our Mishnah, or the rest of the items that we have in this brisa, which are plucking, or Meirate, excuse me, is using a chemical to cause the hair to fall out, a depilatory, or safe, or picking. So all of those, even a small amount, how do we know that all of those are also prohibited? So Talmud Lomar, Kodesh Yiyeh Gadel Pera Se'er Rosho, that the hair of his head should continue to grow. So as a result, that shows that as Rashi says in the Rashi, it's about it's middle of the wider lines at the bottom of the Rashi of Mefarish on Lamed Tet Amabet, where it says Talmud Lomar Kodesh Yiyeh. The point is that the point of those words is Shelo Yeshirenu Bishum Davar. You shouldn't cut it with anything. V'yanichanu l'gadel para. You need to let it to grow into tresses. You need to let it to grow. So Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. So that's what Rabbi Yoshia says. So again, Rabbi Yoshia says that the end of the verse where it says razor says you need to let it grow. And so as a result, that shows that you can't remove it in any which way. And Rabbi Yonasan Omer, no, ta'ar ein li elatar. Rabbi Yonasan says, no, a razor means a razor. Meiri talosh siv sev kolshu patur. If you use anything else, yes, you may have violated the positive commandment of letting your hair grow, but you are not violated a negative commandment, and therefore you are going to be exempt. Well, 1 second, Bahak Siv Kodesh Yiyeh, how does he understand? Doesn't the end of the verse indicate that some kind of restriction? So yes, if you cut your hair with a razor, you end up violating both a positive commandment and a negative commandment. And so that's the point. Well, Tanya Idach, now we have a second brisa that's along the same lines. So let's see what the second brisa does. Tar, again, we have this razor. The fact that the pasuk mentions razor, ein li elatar, that tells us that at least a razor is going to cause you to be obligated. Talash merit siv save kol minayin. How do I know everything else? How do I know that if you use some kind of other mechanism, you're going to have a problem? Talmud Lomar lo ya'avor al rosho. So the point is that the pasuk said tar lo ya'avor al rosho, but it didn't really need to say that. It could have just said lo ya'avor al rosho. Nothing should pass over your head. No mechanism for cutting the hair should pass over your head. But now in second, since we already have that everything is included in the words of Lo Yavor al Rosho, Mal Toma Lomer Ta'ar, Lo Yavor al Rosho. Why did we need to say that the razor should not pass over your head? Meaning, why not just say Lo Yavor al Rosho alone? So razor is unnecessary because we want to point out that anything that passes over one's head and removes hair is going to be prohibited. Because this is how we learn. Because we could not learn when it comes to the shaving at the end of the time. You're not able to learn that from a mitzora. And the point is we want to say that the concept is that we need to use a razor at the end of the Nazirut period, that at the end of the Nazirut period, rather than using scissors or some kind of other permitted shaver, you actually have to formally use a razor on the person's head. As we turn to Mem Amud Aleph, she'ain done in kal mechamor, because we don't learn a lesser prohibition from a more stringent. We don't use that to learn a more stringent prohibition. So as a result, that is not going to be our source, and now the rush here helps us out to understand what this is all talking about. So if you take a look at the rush, the first rush on the outside column, outside of the main columns of the page on Mem Amud Aleph, she'ain done kal mechamor, shehamitzora chamor. A mitzora is more strict than somebody who has sarat, the leprosy, the religious leprosy, I should say. So they are subject to more strict rules when it comes to their shaving. Shetzarach legaleach kol seyar. They have to shave their entire hair on all seyar gufo, their entire hair on their entire body. Nazir ela rosho. He only shaves Nazir only shaves the hair on his head. Hilkach ksiv beisar. So that's why it specifically needs to say the word sa'ar in connection with ta'ar, in connection with the shaving prohibition of a Nazir, to tell us that when it comes to their shaving at the end, you need to use specifically a razor. Dim eno inyan lahavaris ta'ar. Because obviously we don't need it to tell us you can't use a razor, because we have the words lo yavor al rosho, nothing should pass over the person's head. Lucky, because it doesn't make a difference what you use, you'll get malchus if you use something to remove your hair. So as a result, tanahu inyan litiglachas mitzvah v'hashlama nirziroto. So the reference to ta'ar and to a razor is to specifically tell you that when you use that razor when you have to do the shaving at the end of your Nazirut, you have to use a razor. Now that's the position of the Tanakama of the Brisa, but Rebbe Omer Eino Tzarach. Rebbe says, no, that's not true. You don't need to use, you don't need to say that the word ta'ar is extra. We could say that just read the pasuk. Because the pasuk says, "Harehu Omer Tar Lo Yavor Al Rosho Ad Milot," that a razor should not pass over the person's head until the end of the period of time that he's the Nazir. So HaTorah Amra Achar Milot Lo Tehei Tiglachat Ela B'Tar. The implication of that sentence is that you should use a razor. Well, 1 second, B'Haksiv Tar Lo Yavor Al Rosho. Well, 1 second, it does say that the razor shouldn't pass over the person's head, and so since the pass over the person's head is enough to tell us about the razor, certainly the word razor is extra. So lavor alav b'shnei lavin. So Rebbe would say that yes, the extra word of tar tells us that if you use a tar to shave your head, you are going to have violated two different prohibitions. You're going to have violated tar lo yavor al rosho, and you're going to have violated lo yavor al rosho. And so those are the two things that Rebbe learns from those words. And so as a result, that's how Rebbe uses ta'ar, the extra word. And so now that we've done that, so we've mentioned over the course of today, we've mentioned two different categories of people who are required to shave their hair. One is a Nazir, and the second is a Metzora, person with the spiritual leprosy. And of course, and we noted a difference between the two because the Metzora shaves all the hair on their entire body during the course of the purification process. But there is a third category of person who is also required to shave his hair. But for that, you will have to wait for tomorrow's daf. And so I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Dr. Pollack.
Have a great day.
Shabbat
Have a
shalom.
great job.
Thank you.